Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex Podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. If you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Class 6 Partners. Are you ready to sell your business or raise capital? Class 6 Partners guides you through the entire process, from business optimization to securing the perfect deal. With over $3 billion in transactions, they turn your business dreams into reality. Visit class6partners.com to start your journey today. It's interesting for me as I get older. I want to grow the business and I want to, make enough money for retirement and all these things. But I also, sometimes I'm busier than I want to be. Does that make sense?
100. I mean, it's literally why I left corporate America and went into business for myself. I just thought there has to be more than this. And I was on the road every week and wasn't seeing my family and spending time with them. And I also just have really appreciated in the last 3 years running this business, just the need for my body to rest. And I assume that's an aging thing also, but if you go hard at the gym and you go hard at work and you go hard with the family and do lots of fun things and vacation and all that, like at some point your body, you just need to sit still for a minute and, like do nothing, listen to a good podcast, read a good book. That's it. I mean,
Yep.
it's crazy.
I get up super early. So I'm a morning guy. So, I'll be up by 4:30 usually.
Yeah.
But if you try to call me after 9 p.m., I'm probably asleep.
No doubt. I mean, no doubt. This past weekend when my girls had homecoming and we were like, okay, well, you're gonna pick us up at 11. And I mean, my husband and I were like, 11? I mean, who is awake at 11?
Not
And it's
me.
Saturday night. But yeah, I mean, we were like, can't we just pay somebody to like bring you home? Or I mean, it's crazy. I mean, same. I'm the
Isn't it
exact
weird?
same.
I told my youngest son the other day that I was in bed before 9, and he just thought that was the weirdest. He's just like, "What, Dad? That's weird." I said, "Guys, it's like, yeah, but keep in mind, I'm 4 hours into my day by the time you get up."
Right, right,
So,
right. Yeah, absolutely.
and,
No doubt.
yeah, well, you're in great shape. You and your husband like teaches
CrossFit. Yeah, he's a
yeah,
CrossFit coach.
CrossFit, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
you guys are in great shape for
right.
your age. You're
Yeah,
both like
it feels like we get one life and one body, right? Like if we do not treat it well, I just finished the Whole 30. I don't know if you're familiar with the Whole 30. So it's an
no.
elimination diet. Essentially, like if you didn't kill it or pull it out of the ground, you can't eat it. So I
Okay.
mean, like
Okay.
it is no sugar, no gluten, no nothing processed, no alcohol, of course, no legumes, no dairy, no, I mean, it is meat, fish, chicken, eggs, veggies,
And
some
veggies.
nuts,
Yeah.
and fruit. And I mean, the dramatic difference I felt in my body, from doing that for 30 days. And right now I'm in the kind of reintroduction where you very slowly reintroduce each one to see if your body reacts to it. But
Yeah.
I just felt so much better that part of me was like, oh, this is what I got to eat from now on, like to take care of my body. Cause I mean, I'm 55. I don't want to be gone in, like 10 years. I want to be gone in like, I don't know, 30. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's not now. So
I also don't want to be gone necessarily too early. However, are your parents still alive?
they are.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, my mom just turned 80 and my dad passed a couple of years, 2 or 3 years
Mhm.
ago, maybe 4 years ago now. And
Wow.
he was 84.
Hmm.
And the last 4 years, of his life, I was kind of like, man,
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to live like that. Like
Yeah.
I
Yes.
don't really, if I
Yeah.
can't like go to the restroom by myself and take my own
Yeah.
shower, like,
Yes. Yes.
so I'm with you. I want to be around, but I want to be independent and be
Yes.
around. I don't
Yes.
want to, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And, just think about our kids, Steve, like I
Right.
just don't want that for my kids, right? I mean, I
Exactly.
want my kids. I mean, we are in this very interesting place of like
Yep.
parenting high schoolers. And then it feels like, I mean, hopefully my parents won't listen to this, but like parenting my parents, right? They're aging and need a lot of our support. One set of parents needs a lot less support than another set. And so we're just managing that. None of them are here in Colorado, so we have to travel pretty
Yep.
extensively to get to them. And I
Yep.
just don't want that for my kids. I'm like you. I want to be able to, I mean, CrossFit is functional fitness. I mean, the reason that we do a deadlift is so that we can literally pick up things off of the ground. We're not trying to, I mean, obviously I'm not doing deadlifts to try to be a
Yeah.
like, you know, um,
Oh,
a professional,
a weightlifter.
weightlifter. No, I'm doing it so that I can literally pick stuff off the ground until I drop dead at 85, really healthy or whatever. I mean, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. My yeah, oldest boy, he was asking me, well, somehow we were talking about kind of the goals from here financially for me and Kim. He was just like, Dad, what are you trying to get to? What are you trying to, what's your mark or whatever, or your goal, I guess he was asking me at this point. And I said, my real goal at this point is to not end up being a burden for you and Spencer.
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah, if I can just not be a burden for you guys,
Yes.
then I'm good.
Yeah.
Then I'm good. Like
Yeah.
I just don't want to be a burden. That's my
Yeah.
main
Yeah.
goal right now. So anyway,
Yeah.
uh,
And to
so
enjoy your grandkids and to enjoy,
and then, right,
and
right,
to enjoy your kids at that
right.
phase of their life, which just feels like a very different season, I mean, so yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I like your diet, and I'm pretty close to it. I'm pretty close. Meat, veggies,
Yeah.
and still do some carbs, but I try to be careful with it. So I'm careful with it.
Yeah.
Uh, the bourbon and the beer, I can't cut that out. If I just, I mean, if I don't, man, I don't know. It's a vice or whatever. But if I can't relax after a hard day and have a
Yeah.
cold beer, like I don't know if I just maybe would rather be dead. I guess I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
and I mean, that is that and my iced vanilla latte every morning. Those
okay,
two are and
okay.
people are like, oh, have it with a nut pod, have it with almond milk. I'm like, no, I'm good. Thanks. I want it with, I mean, it's really like starting my day with a vanilla milkshake. And I admit that. I mean, I totally get it. I only have one, so that's, I guess, good since it costs $7. But, that alcohol
That's your.
cocktail place is an Aperol Spritz. I mean,
I see.
hot summer day and, on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, so that part. And so, for me, it's the moderation thing. Like, okay, so I'm going to just reserve that for the weekend or special occasions or whatever. But
I
I'm
got you.
with you. I mean, that
Yeah,
part is the
I
hardest
have
for
a.
sure. Yeah.
I want to do this. I'm going to hang on just a second. Let me take a pause real quick.
Okay. Figure his stuff out.
Okay. Okay, we're back. Yeah, for the listeners, I had to go out and move my Starlink satellite dish around. We got the Starlink dish, and I need to have it mounted to the house, but because we have an RV, sometimes we take it with us.
Right.
And so it's kind of just sitting out there. Anyway,
Yeah.
the lawnmower guy moves it around. Anyway, so tell for the listeners, Evelyn, real quick, just about you, mom, dad, where you grew up. Can you give us just a little background?
Sure. Yeah. So grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. That's home. And I was there through high school. Loved it. I had a pretty great childhood, big group of friends, super involved in school. Was an athlete I've been an athlete my whole life. And also just kind of in those high school years, really figured out like, okay, giving back is really my superpower. Like I just really want to be engaged
Good.
and volunteer and so I'm grateful I kind of had that opportunity. Went to undergrad at Ohio Wesleyan. So that was a little bit of a strategy to get as far away from my parents as I could. That worked
Okay.
out pretty well. Amazing 4 years at Ohio Wesleyan. And then spent a year on Capitol Hill working for then a congressman from Arizona, and then went to grad school at the University of South Carolina. And at that time, I thought I wanted to be a college administrator. So I had this exceptional college experience where I was very close to administrators at the school, and I was very, very involved and in student council and fraternity and
Cool.
sorority life, and
All right.
I was a student justice and those kinds of things. And I worked in higher education for 2 years, and I was like, I cannot do this. I mean, I was bailing fraternity men out of jail on the weekends, and I was spending my weekends with sorority women in the emergency room, and I was like, I'm not going to do, and they were paying me, as you can imagine, higher education, like literally nothing. And I was like, I don't think I can do this. And that was the first time I hired a coach. And the coach said to me, hey, have you ever considered human resources? And I didn't even know what human resources was. I mean, this is 1997. So, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
HR, they probably still called us personnel back then. Like, I don't even know. And I said, no, I don't, what's HR? And she said, well, it's very similar to what you're doing right now, training, recruiting, crisis management, counseling, development of people, people leadership, all the stuff you're doing now, except for you don't have to live in a college dorm in an apartment, and you're going to get paid like more than $1 an hour. And, like it'll be really, and so that is what started it. And I started my 27-year HR career in recruiting, loved it. And that's, kind of why I have a real love for, firms like Riderflex. I just loved recruiting. Like I just
Cool.
thought, and I was an in-house recruiter at a couple companies, technology companies back then, but I just thought finding people a job. And back then, as you know, like we all had Blackberries and Palm Pilots, and we didn't
Yeah.
have, I mean, people were
LinkedIn.
sending
You couldn't just find people on LinkedIn. No, no,
no,
no.
no LinkedIn, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people were sending you their resume. It would come in the mail,
Mail. Right.
you
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
scan it into your very
Yeah.
ancient, like applicant tracking systems, which were even worse then than they are now. So,
Oh
I mean,
man. Yeah. Yeah.
so that I was in corporate human resources for 27 years. So finishing my career in several CHRO roles. I mean, I had incredible experiences. I was on incredible HR teams, worked for great leaders. I'm so grateful for that experience. But in 2020, ran about 1,000-person layoff, and it just crushed my soul. Like I literally was like, I can't do this anymore. And I think I've mentioned to you before, I literally had this view I was going to die. It's so funny that we were already talking about the end of our life. But I literally thought I was going to die, and people were going to be like, well, she ran a great layoff. I mean, my packet was
That was it.
perfect. She she ruined my life with such grace, and she was so nice. And I was like, yeah, that cannot be my legacy. So in 2020, at the end of 2020, I left corporate America and started this business. And I've been doing this for 3 years, executive career leadership coaching, HR consulting, training and development, and I love it. I mean, I just can't even believe that this is what I get to do all the time.
Before we get into your business, let me ask you what did your folks do? Were your mom or dad in HR or anything
Yeah.
like that? What was the
So
tie-in?
yeah, so my dad, my dad became a single dad in San Francisco, California when I was really, really young, and decided to go to law school. So
Oh,
he did remarry, and so when he got out of law school, his first job at a law firm was in Phoenix. So we moved there when I was in about second grade. So my mom was a homemaker, and my dad was a lawyer at a big firm in Phoenix, like the second largest
well,
law firm
okay.
in Phoenix.
Is he your what's the word I'm looking for?
Biological dad, yes, yes. So,
Well,
and then I was raised by my biological dad and my stepmom. So,
I
yeah,
see. I see. Do you know who
yeah,
your real mother is?
I do, yeah. And I have a relationship with her. I think she just pretty wisely decided early in my life that in my life, I was two, my brother was one, that she wasn't set to be a mom. So she just moved to New York City, and she's lived there ever since. And then she kind of re-entered our life when we were about 6 or 7. But right now, now I have a great relationship with her. I see her once or twice a year, more like a friendship though than a maternal relationship, right? So
Mm.
we go spend a long weekend together and spa and shop and eat, but she's not a maternal figure in my life.
Did she ever remarry and have kids or no?
Nope, nope. Yeah. And
I
she's
see.
actually 37 years sober. So that was also part of the
I
equation.
see.
I think that she figured out early on that, that life that she was living was what she wanted to be doing, and that does not pair well with parenting, as you know. So, and so when I
Uh,
was in high school is when she got sober. So that was obviously a gigantic change in our relationship, because prior to that, we were probably not going to be in a lifelong relationship if that hadn't happened.
you
So,
you call both of them. You call both of them mom.
I do. And then my dad and my stepmom, who raised me, got divorced when I was in grad school. And my
Bummer.
dad, I know, got married again. And he's been married to his third wife for um, 27 years. And she's like the third was the charm. Like this is like and so she's also, I guess, my stepmom, but they got married when I was an adult. So for me, like
I see.
also
Do
not
you
really a
still have do
maternal.
you still have a relationship with his second wife? Of course.
Yes, yes, yeah, yes, yeah.
Wow. Okay. You got a
So
lot. Hey,
yeah, it's a lot.
Thanksgiving and Christmas is it's like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Where
I
do we go? I don't know.
mean, my brother and I at Mother's Day are just like, wow, okay, we have a lot of work to do today. I mean, it's just, my when I got married
Uh,
20 years ago to Christian, and then we had our girls, he does such a good job of making Mother's Day a great deal for me. And I'm kind of like, I'm good, actually. I've kind of had enough Mother's Day, like last my whole, like
that's so
I'm
good.
good. Let's do
So fun.
something really fun for Father's Day.
How many half brothers and steps and sisters and
Yeah.
what do you got going on
So
there?
only two stepbrothers. So two
Okay.
stepbrothers from my current stepmom, if you will. So my dad's current wife has two sons. They are ironically, both of them grew up with my brother and I in Phoenix. So we went to high school together. Yeah.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so
Wow.
we go to
Wow.
high school reunions, and
Wow.
literally people say, Evelyn Jones and Matt Patton are brother and sister. Like, how did that even happen? I mean, so really funny. But yeah, so one of those
uh,
stepbrothers lives in Port Townsend, Washington, and the other one lives in Phoenix. So
is your
still,
dad a
so
retired lawyer now or still
he
works?
is, he is. Yeah. So about the last 15 years of his career, made partner, obviously, in the law firm, did very, very well. But then decided to go in-house, and he was the general counsel for, um, Del Webb Corporation. So all the Sun Cities, so all the retirement communities all around
I
the
see.
United States.
I see.
And
I
then they
see.
got bought by Pulte Homes, and they were asked my dad to move to Detroit, and he was like, no, I don't think so. So they
Was your dad tough on you or a softie?
he was pretty tough on me. I mean, I would say not tough on me. Like when I hear that, it's such a good question, actually. When I hear that, I think people I think he had a very, very high bar. He went to Ivy League schools.
Oh, he
I
did.
think,
I see.
yeah, my brother and I were going to go to Ivy League schools. That did not happen. So I think he is so smart. I just think he wanted the very, very best for us. So he just pushed us really hard. And so did my stepmom, who raised us. She was very strict. We just grew up with a lot of rules. So I made up for that in college for sure. And broke all the rules I could in college. But that was also, I'm very grateful, because when I look back on that, I just think it was really who
So,
formed who I am today.
so you weren't very wild in high school, but when you got to college, you let loose a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in high school, I don't know how it was in your high school, but in my high school in Phoenix, if you got caught or got in trouble, you got benched. So you did
Yeah.
not get to play.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
they don't do that anymore. You still get to go to homecoming if you only have one F. I'm fascinated by that. But, like if we got it cut, so the kids that were smoking pot behind the buildings, obviously it wasn't legal back then,
Yeah.
like at all. Or
Uh,
they got caught drinking on the weekend or anything. If you got in trouble, and then it did not matter how good you were on the team, you
yeah.
sat on the bench the whole
Yeah.
game. Suited up, you do nothing. And you did
So,
all the
yeah.
practices, you did all the hard work, but you did not get, so that the threat of not playing for
I
me
see.
was way greater than, yeah, so
It
super
was different back then. Hey, when I was in high school, I remember getting licks,
oh yeah. Yeah.
licks, like with a paddle, physical.
Well, and sometimes, as you know, back then you got in trouble. You just showed up for practice, and they were like, "We're just going to run today because you all did this or
Yeah,
that, or
did this,
you
yep.
didn't help your team." Yeah, and we just ran until we threw up. It's like if they did that today, they would get sued. Like it's
I
terrible.
know,
But
right?
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
totally different
so funny.
world.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you're moving through your H. When did you get married? When did you meet
I
your
got
husband?
married 20 years ago. So late. I was like 35. So almost all my friends were already married. Really took, I had to kiss a lot of frogs before I found my prince. Yeah.
Were you ever close before? Like, did you get
Oh yeah,
close?
I had like several very serious boyfriends, but it's so interesting that you asked that question. I was just thinking about that the other day. And I had like great relationships, like and to this day am very close friends with several of those
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. Cool.
Um, Values alignment, that's where the miss was. So they,
Interesting.
just either my
Interesting.
faith or just how we were living our lives just were a little bit off, and that's how either I figured out or they figured out like we weren't the one, and then we would just end it or whatever. But I mean, incredible guys that were fun and
I see.
smart and just had great experiences, so but set
But,
me up for
you
marriage.
mentioned your faith. So
Yeah.
are you, what
Yeah,
are you, so
evangel
to speak?
yeah.
Catholic? What are you?
So grew up Episcopalian and then became an evangelical Christian my senior year of college through Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So
Interesting. Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting.
so I,
Okay.
grew up in high school with Christian friends, but kind of didn't really get it, and then got to college, and I was like, whoa, okay, nobody here is doing that program, so I'm not going to do that program. And then actually went to the chaplain at my college and said, this is what all my friends believe, and I think I want to believe that, and I think I want to live that life. I've watched their families and have admired their families my whole life. And he said, I think you should go to Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I was like, okay, athletes, like I can do that. That
I
sounds
see.
amazing.
Wow.
And I walked into FCA my literally first week of my senior year. Keep in mind, super small school, knew almost everybody in the school because I was super involved, all that. And I walked into FCA and there were like 50 people there in a school of 2,000. And all the people who were in there were the student leaders, the fraternity presidents that were like super smart and fun, but they weren't sleeping around. They weren't getting wasted every weekend. They weren't doing drugs. And I was like, what are y'all doing here? And they were like, what are you doing here? I mean, so, and then that was really just started my whole kind of faith journey. I was
Ah,
dating a midshipman at the Naval Academy at the same time, and he also kind of came to faith at that around that exact same time. So,
I see. I
yeah,
see.
it's
I see. I see.
crazy.
Okay. Okay. Very good. And you still practice your faith
Yeah,
now.
yes, yeah. I mean, we're very involved with Young Life, and we are on the North American Committee for Young Life Africa, which helps send
Cool.
African high schoolers to camp, Christian
Uh,
camp every
all right.
summer,
All right.
and in Africa, in the Middle East. And we've been doing that for about 14 years. We obviously have a church locally here in Colorado. I mean, it is the driver of our whole family life,
That's
I would
cool.
say.
Yeah. Very
Yeah,
cool. Very
yeah,
cool. It seems like maybe I'm wrong. I don't have any stats on this, so maybe I'm just talking out of my ass and I don't know what I'm saying, but it feels like um, the country has drifted from religion over the
yeah,
last
yeah, yeah,
25, 30 years. Is
yeah,
that just me? I don't know. Feels like it's drifted
yeah,
away. Feels like it's drifted
yeah.
away.
I think you're right, and I mean this is a pretty controversial thing to say, but I actually kind of blame the American church.
Huh?
I
Huh?
think that it's just we feel blessed to have a church that meets our needs, and we really learn and grow, and is also a seeker friendly church that people can they like we're a hospital for sinners, as like everybody's welcome. We're here for everybody.
I like that.
But
Hospital for Sinners.
I just think the church has really struggled with the rules, with the legalism, and I think that has turned a lot of people away from faith. And I just don't. I think the church has got to kind of get their act together a little bit. So and
Yeah.
work together. Like all the churches don't seem like they're. There's pockets where that's happening,
There's a
but
good point. There's a good point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Interesting. Okay,
yeah,
interesting. All
yeah,
right, very good. Appreciate you sharing that.
yeah,
So you're having this, you're having a good career. You're moving along
yeah,
in HR.
yeah.
You kind of touched on this a second ago, but what was there one or two things that happened, or were you just like laying in bed? You're like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to start my own thing. Let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit about the transition, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, one of the drivers was in March of 2020, I did end up
Oh,
in the
yeah.
hospital.
Okay. Okay. Because
And
all the stress with the layoff you mentioned.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I got you.
And March of 2020 was not a good time to go to the
Yeah.
hospital. Not a good
That's right.
time.
Yeah. That's
I
a good
mean,
point. Yeah. Because your husband probably couldn't even go in, I'm guessing.
no, correct. I mean, and I was like on the phone arguing with my cardiologist. I mean, I was like, no, I'm not, I'm not driving to the hospital and admitting myself. Like, I'm not doing that. That's like bananas. Like, have you, like, do you know what's going on? This was the very end of March, so very beginning of April. And he
Okay.
was like, Evelyn, we don't take that, we take this stuff seriously. You're just going to probably spend one night there. I just want to check some things out. And I was like, and it was just hilarious, of course, because I'm like, fine, I'm compliant, so I listened to my doctor, and I really liked him. And I go in there, and there is a totally separate place in the hospital at this point for people who don't have any COVID symptoms.
I
And
see.
there was like a whole crew of people. I had like 3 ER docs in my room. I'm like, okay, this seems like a little bit of an over exaggeration of what's going on here. And they were like, we're just so happy you're here and you don't have any COVID symptoms and we're going to help you. And I mean, it was just this big pregnant nurse came in and she was like, they were about to send me home, but now you're here, so I get to stay at work. And I was like, okay, well, I'm glad y'all are happy I'm here because I am not
Wow.
happy I'm here.
Interesting. And
So,
what were
yeah.
you having?
Yeah.
Were you having pains or what was the
Yeah,
deal?
just like very mild chest pain that really ended up like the next day I had a heart cath. They said structurally your heart is perfect. So he was like, you have to
Stress.
manage your stress. You got to
Stress.
figure it out. Yeah.
It is. We could do a whole podcast episode on what stress does to your life and your body and your mind. It's just unbelievable it's so destructive. But
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
all right. So after that, you're like, okay, I can't do this
Yeah.
anymore.
I mean, that started the conversation of like, okay, really, am I going to do this? And at that point, as you know,
I
Steve,
see.
like we were all video ready at 6 a.m. and on video calls. My daughter would
Right.
come in at like 7:30 at night into my home office and say, "Hey, mom, dinner's ready." I'd be like, "Dinner?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's 7:30. I mean, you've been literally sitting in this chair since." My husband would bring lunch into me at like 3 in the afternoon because I just forgot, and it's just too, it was just, we were just trying to figure out what we were doing. We were still
Yeah.
washing off our groceries in the front. I mean, just ridiculous. Anyway, I mean, it's hilarious to
Well,
me.
yeah, it is hilarious when you think back. When you look back now, you're like, "What the hell?"
What
Yeah,
was
yeah. We could. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
so, and then yeah, so that was kind of like spring of 2020, and then by December of 2020, I was like, and my company was running a huge layoff at that time, and so I did go to my boss, who I really liked and had a lot of respect for him and how he was running our business, and I just said, "Hey, are we running a voluntary program?" And he said no, and then somehow I kind of ended up on the list, and I was so grateful. And so I had an incredible severance package. We were in the middle of a 2-year business transformation. So I got the first year bonus of that business transformation, which was hugely successful. And so it was,
You
it
got a
felt
little,
like
got a
the
little, got a
biggest
little
gift.
suitcase of cash on your way
Oh,
out.
I mean, it was really nice. I mean, really a gift.
Then
So
what?
yeah.
Then what you do? Take a couple of months off and just chill.
And that's what I did. I took a whole year off. So
I
I took
see.
all of 2021 off before I started this business because
All right.
I remember calling back to the rest thing. I remember calling a friend. It was like in March. So I had been off of work for 3 months. I was getting involved. I was traveling. I was reading. I was hanging out at my kids'
Great.
schools and
Love
helping
it.
out there.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I was sleeping. And I called one of my friends and I said, I mean, I'm still sleeping like 10 or 11 hours a night. Like, what is wrong with me? And she was like, I mean, you probably should take like a 4-year sabbatical to make up for what you did to your body and to your mind. And I was like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. But, I mean, I rested. I needed
2020,
rest.
you'll look back on your life and 2021 will be one of you'll really
Yes.
cherish that year.
Yes. It was
Big time.
incredible. And we finished that year 6 weeks in Mexico. So we just took the girls out of school and we went
Cool.
to Mexico for 6 weeks and went to language
Cool.
school and traveled the country. And it was incredible. I mean, incredible,
That's great.
like best 6 weeks of my life. I mean,
That's pretty
literally.
cool.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Cool. So then what? Then you're like, okay, I'm getting bored. I'm getting bored or what? What
No,
happened?
I wasn't bored. I mean, people are like, you're going to be so bored. And I was like, really? And, I mean, I was volunteering like crazy. I
So you're
was
busy. You were
Yeah, I
busy.
was busy. I mean, but not crazy. I mean, I wasn't landing myself in the hospital busy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
my friends would call me and say, "Hey, help me with my job search." And I'd say, "Oh, okay, great. That sounds awesome." I did that the whole time I was in corporate America, but now I had like all this time to do that.
Okay.
People would call me. A friend of mine was going through cancer treatments, and she said, "Hey, I just need somebody to drive me to my chemo all day, stay with me all day." And then I was like, "Yes, yes, yes." Like I just felt like I was getting to say yes to a lot of the things that I
Okay. Okay.
didn't. But then, yes, I mean, I had to make some money. I mean, that was like that had to happen.
So
So,
you didn't,
so
all right. So
yeah,
you couldn't retire. I mean, you weren't, you
yeah,
weren't,
yeah.
yeah. Okay. You
No,
needed
I
to,
wasn't 52. Yeah,
yeah.
52.
There
So,
wasn't, you didn't, okay. There was not 10, you didn't have $10 million in the bank to just
no, I
chill.
did not. No, no, no. That was not my severance package. I mean, I asked for that, but that did not happen. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So what you like, okay, I'm going to file an LLC. I'm going to call it something. What'd you, are you like,
Well, I called my friend Scott Kegaris and I said, at Riderflex and said, "So how do you like start a business?" I mean, literally. I mean, Christian and I, we literally had no idea what we were doing.
uh,
But I joined a friend of mine actually from high school who was in Buena Vista and had started his own leadership development company. But
okay.
his clients were asking him for some coaching, and he didn't
Okay.
have that in his organization. So I started there doing some coaching for him,
I see.
and then about 6 months into that, we said, I literally had this moment where I was like, I'm still working for the man. Like, I need to do my own thing. And so that's when we started the summer of 2022 is when we kind
Mm.
of started our talking about starting this business and launching the Next Up Leadership Group.
Okay.
And by that
Okay.
time, I was getting much clearer about, okay, I want to, because I grew up in recruiting, I love helping people find a job. I want that to be about half my business. Executive career coaching, like mostly executives,
Okay.
although every once in a while, I'll coach a 30-year-old, who's looking for a new job, usually the children of my friends, which seems a little shocking that I could be that old, but mostly helping big leaders make a transition, either their choice or not. So I knew that I wanted that to be half my business, and then the other half to be kind of executive leadership coaching, HR consulting, and some training and facilitation work. So
Okay.
yeah.
It's Next Up Leadership Group.
Yes, Next
And do,
Up Leadership Group.
and do we have a website?
Um, so back then, people were like, "You need a website, you need a landing page." I was like, "Okay." So I got nextupleadershipgroup.com. I bought the URL, and then the business started, and I just started getting all these clients, and I was like, "I guess I don't know that I
You
need
want
a
to,
website."
okay.
But
All right.
we're
Yeah.
now at the place where, so I've been using LinkedIn, the Next Up Leadership Group page on LinkedIn. That was where I send everybody. That's where my bio is. That's where people can schedule appointments with me, all of that. And obviously my own LinkedIn page. But now we've written a business plan now, like that we've been in it a couple of years, real clarity about the type of client we want to work with, all that kind of stuff. So now it is time to kind of build out that landing page that we bought for sure, the
Okay.
URL.
Okay. So, all right. Tell us. All right. So if I'm listening to this episode, am I calling you? I'm calling you if I'm an executive that wants to move to the next level. Am I calling you if I'm an executive that's stressed out and burned out and just needs somebody to talk to? Am I calling you if I'm an executive that just got laid off and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do now?
Yeah.
All three of
All of
those,
those things. Yes, all three of
all
those.
of
Yes.
those.
No. Yes, all of
And
those.
am I calling you to say, what if I'm an executive and I'm like, hey, my leadership team can't function and they're always arguing and we need help?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
That I love that work. I mean, that's awesome. That's super fun to do
Okay.
that
And
work.
then how about lower level middle managers that are looking for resume or LinkedIn or career coaching, that
Yeah,
stuff
I
too?
do all that. I do all that work, and I don't have. There's a lot of coaches out there that just work with C-suite, like they do. That's all they
Uh-huh.
do.
Uh-huh.
I have not built my business that way. I work with all levels. The
Okay.
majority of my business comes from my network, and the majority. I ended my career for the last 10 years in the C-suite, so that's where the
Well,
majority
you
of my
know
business
everybody.
comes from. Yes,
I got you.
but
I got
but
you.
that I mean, I'm so glad you said that, Steve. That those brand new people leaders, like that set of leaders who is like, we just handed them our greatest asset, our people, and said, like, don't screw it up, really. That coaching that level of leader and doing, brand new leader assimilation and helping those leaders just be exceptional. Like, tactical stuff like how to have a really impactful one-on-one with your people, how to write a good development plan with your direct reports, like all of that, 360 feedback for those leaders after they've been in the role for a couple of years, and then just really not just HR and 101 and 102, but really like how are you going to create followership, influence, mentorship as a people leader like that. I could do that work all day long. Like that would, I mean, that is actually like some of my most favorite work to do. But yeah,
I'll tell you a quick story. So 2008, during the financial crisis, and it was a messy year. Um, I worked for about a $40 million apparel company in Boulder. I was the director of the retail division. Company was in a free fall. It was not good situation. And at one point, the owners fired the senior leadership team, fired the CEO or the COO and several of the C-suite people.
yeah.
And the owner, Mary Ellen, who I'm still good friends with, she came to me and she said, "Hey, congratulations, you're now in charge of the company." And I remember thinking, wow, okay, I'm in charge of everybody now. I have no idea what I'm doing. And there was no training checklist. There was no onboarding. There was no like, "Hey, Steve,
Yes.
you've never been in the C-suite before, so we're going to spend 2 months training you." No, it was the house is on fire. Company's almost out of cash. It's 2008. The market stinks. And I have to figure out how to be in charge and also keep the bank from calling the notes so we don't close. And there's no training and nothing. That's
And then all these eyes, all these employees
all these
looking at you
eyes,
like,
all these eyes. Yeah. And that's where I was like, where's Evelyn? Where's Evelyn? I need Evelyn right now.
I mean, and think about how many times we do that to big leaders,
All the
right? Now,
time. That
all
was
the time.
that was where I was going
Yes.
to go. You hear this like GE, we'll use the Jack Welch thing, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
GE had this great leadership training program and they spend all this time mentoring and getting the person ready for the next level, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Like, that is such a tiny percentage of what actually happens,
Oh,
because if most small to medium sized businesses, there's
yes.
none of that. None of that.
Literally. Yes.
It's
Yes.
more like, "Hey, John,
Yes.
Sally quit. Congratulations, you're the new COO." That's how it goes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Totally. And probably, Steve, I mean, you tell me how accurate this is, but you rallied, like you read the books, you called a couple friends,
Tried
you
as
figured it
much as
out,
possible.
and you
Yep.
called your mentor, you did all the things, but you
Cried at night, sweat in the
cried
middle
at
of the
night,
night,
lots of bourbon, lots of
lots of
beer, like,
bourbon,
I mean,
all of it. Yeah, all of it.
all
All
that.
of it.
And, but even then, so even when you have a leader who can literally figure all that out, it is lonely at the top.
Oh my
Like,
gosh, yes. Oh,
it
totally.
is so, so even after you'd figured all that out and was like literally took your first deep breath, like whatever, a year later after that,
Yeah.
you is still calling a coach or having an executive coach, a physical trainer, a trainer at the gym, like whatever,
Yeah.
somebody who you
Yeah.
can pay to say, "You're going to be my accountability partner. You're going to be the person I dump my bucket to in a very safe environment. You're going to be the person who I'm going to bounce ideas off of, a business coach." Like, I mean, lots of opportunities, but it's just lonely at the top.
Critical.
I was never that clear until I got into this role, how lonely it is at the top for these
And I
big
think,
leaders.
most people listening to this episode have no idea how lonely it could be and the amount of stress involved. And unless I mean, you can read all the books you want, but until you're the CEO or the president of a company and you got 200 employees watching every single move you make, um, until you've actually lived it, like it's hard
Yeah.
to really
Yes.
understand.
Yeah.
And my second after the apparel company, I was the president of a furniture company in Maryland. And
Okay.
that's when I was just like, damn, this is, you
Yeah.
can't, I mean, I can talk to my wife and she's supportive
Right.
and loving and she's
Of
loving and
course.
everything, but she doesn't understand the business. She doesn't
Yes.
see the
Yeah.
financials. She doesn't, I can't talk to her about everything. Right. And she doesn't
Well, and not
fully
only
get
that,
what's
but
going on.
Steve, not objective, right? I mean, your best
Right.
friend and
Well,
your wife are
exactly.
like, yeah, that board of directors, they're idiots. What are they
Yeah.
doing? They, like they have zero objectivity, right? And so they think, I mean, she thinks you're the most amazing person on the planet Earth, right? Like
Exactly.
that's why she's still
Exactly.
married to you. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your best friend, whoever that is, like, is the exact same. Like they think you're awesome. That's why they're
Right.
your best friend,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
when we pull
Uh,
people like that into our life that are not, that's the experience. I've had a coach my whole life, athletic coaches, of course, but I've also had a career coach, sometimes paid for by me, sometimes paid for by the company. It depends on whether I'm actually like looking to make my next move or I'm trying to just grow in my current
yeah.
role, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, just the ability to call somebody after I ran
Oh, it's
a
one.
thousand
Yes. So
layoff or
awesome.
whatever, and yeah, just I'm a
Yep.
mess, like crying or
Yep.
screaming or whatever, just how do I dump my bucket and then move quickly from that to solutioning and to ideation and to, like how do I have somebody who's not going to tell me I'm awesome all the time, not going to tell, I mean, just how am I going
Exactly.
to speak some truth into my life, but also do that as my partner? So,
Is more of your business coming from a company that's hiring you for several people on the team, or individuals hiring you? Where are you
yeah.
getting?
Yeah, about half of my business is are individuals who are making a move on their own. So either
Okay.
because they've gotten laid off or they got fired or because they
Okay.
currently are employed and they want to. So that's about half of that business is are individuals who are paying me as an individual to be their executive career coach or their career
Okay.
coach. The
Okay.
other half of my business are mostly companies, mostly corporate America. I don't have a niche, if you will, but it's corporate America because that's where I spent my whole
Okay.
career, obviously. And
Okay.
and the majority of those are either companies that are too, kind of to your point earlier, too small to have their own HR department. And so they want me to help them with a little bit of HR consulting work or facilitate their executive offsite if there's some, executive pain points there, or they have high potential leaders and they're hiring me to kind of do some executive coaching for those leaders for succession planning and for shoring up gaps and skill building and stuff like that. So
Now, I'm guessing you don't love hey Evelyn, we got this messy, touchy HR situation between John and Sally. Can you help us? I'm guessing you don't you don't you
I
don't want to
did I did a whole lifetime of that. And
you don't
so
want to
what's
do that
hard about
anymore, do you?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good question because when I started this business, I'm like, I'm never running an investigation again, and I'm never running a layoff again. I'm done. I'm just not, I'm done. I'm not doing that again. And then about a year in, one of my clients called me and said, we need you to
We got
run a layoff.
we got it. Yeah.
And it was a 7-person layoff, so not a gigantic impact. And I quickly learned, in my mind, I was like, oh, I get to do it my way. Like I'm gonna, I
Oh,
was like, okay, these are my parameters. Like you're gonna
I
give
see.
them a
I
totally
see.
kick-ass severance package. You're going to give them tons of notice. You're not going to walk them out the door. You're not going to turn off their email. You're going to provide the EAP for them. You're going to provide a kick-ass outplacement for them. Like, and if they say yes to all those things and they're willing to pay me like higher than my normal hourly rate to do that work, then I'll do it, right? And in that case,
Okay.
it ended up being really great. And I thought, well, I could do more of this if we're going to do it right. I mean,
What
like let's just
about
do
what about hey, we're new. We don't have an HR policy. We don't have a handbook. We don't have
yeah.
forms, blah, blah, blah. Do you want to do any of that stuff?
I mean, again, well, this is where AI is brilliant, right? I mean, you tell
Yeah.
ChatGPT to write you an employee handbook
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is less than 15 pages, is very readable, so every employee will actually read it. It's fun and funny, and it speaks to our company culture around and our mission, vision, values. And here's our mission, vision, values. And literally 20 seconds later, you have an entire handbook, and then I edit it from there, and that takes me an hour maybe to edit a 15-page ham. I mean, that's pretty great work like that,
Yeah.
and so I'll do it now that I have that type of technology
Now
available
that
to
you
me. But
now that you
no,
have your
yeah,
administrative assistant that you can say, hey,
exactly. I mean,
produce a draft
yeah,
for me that I can look at.
totally. I mean, yeah,
By the way,
absolutely.
for the listeners, not to go down the rabbit hole of large language models, but in my opinion, at least for right now, that's how you should be using it.
Exactly.
Use it to get drafts or templates or a
No
base,
doubt. Yes,
and then tweak and proof and personalize it.
no
You
doubt.
know, I mean,
Yes, no
don't
doubt. Yeah.
I don't recommend copying and pasting without looking
Yeah.
at it.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And in fact,
Uh,
one of my one of my clients was interviewing 2 weeks ago for a company, final round. They were actually 4 final round candidates at this company. My client was one of the 4. And they asked them they were doing a whole day of interviewing and touring, and then they were doing a presentation. And the day before the interview, the hiring manager called my client and said, okay, I'm sure you're not doing this, but it seems like, assuming that I shouldn't have to say this to you, but do not have AI do your entire presentation without editing it. And she was like, yeah, I didn't have AI do any of my presentation actually, because I really wanted it to be my authentic voice because I really want this job. And he said, okay, good. And, but that was, and she said, of course, why? What happened? I mean, why are you telling me this? And he said, the candidate who was with us all day today, it was so obvious that he literally put in whatever his presentation was about and didn't even edit it or look at it or whatever. And so he came in and gave this presentation that was so obviously not his, and he couldn't speak to it from a
Couldn't
very
speak to
authentic
it. Yeah,
place.
you couldn't speak to it.
I
See, that's
mean,
the
and yeah,
that's the
huge.
problem.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
So my client, of course, calls me and says, can you believe somebody did that? I was like, no, but I guess that's what we do now. I mean, so fascinating. I mean,
yeah, yeah. We can move off of it. I'll tell you one more thing, and I want to ask you about two other things. In my opinion, so I have, for example, I have, I use ChatGPT versus the other large language models. I know everybody's got their favorites, and I've got little agents built. I got one that's Steve's social media, Steve emails, Steve this, Steve that, and I've trained them all
yeah,
to know who I am and speak like me or whatever. And so it'll be my thought, right?
yes.
I'll talk into the microphone. I'm like, hey, I got this idea for this. This is what I'd like to do. And I'm just talking to it, right? I got this idea for this post round, blah, 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 blah. And I'm talking to it. And I was like, this is kind of just like, by the way, lawyers used to dictate in the dictate machine to their administrative secretary who would type it up. Same damn thing. And so I'll do that. And then it'll kick me out a draft. And I'll look at it and be like, okay, this is not bad. And then I'll be like, okay, yeah, I don't like this. I don't like that. Change this, change that. And I'm reading it and I'll go back and forth. Right.
Yes.
And then I'll look at the final document and I'll be like, okay, good. All right, I like that. So that's how you should be using these AI tools. You shouldn't just say, I need a presentation, make it for me and copy and paste it and not even look at it and turn it in. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not,
I mean, ChatGPT is not sitting next to you in the interview, by
right.
the way. I mean, you're not going to whip out your computer or even your phone and say, great question, 1 minute. And I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, so yeah, absolutely.
I did have, here's a funny story. I had a situation. This is a good one. And we'll see more of this. It's going to be the employer's robot versus the employee's robot. And so I had this situation where the client calls me and says, hey, we've decided to implement a little test survey thing that we want you to send to the candidates to fill out. I said, okay, is this new? Yeah. We're just going to implement this going forward. And she goes, I'm going to send it to you. And she sent it to me. And I called her, and I'm pretty close with this client. I called her. I was like, well, did you have this the whole time? Like, this is pretty in depth. She goes, no. I had ChatGPT just create it today. Like she created it that day. And so she sends me that. And of course, the employee candidate grabs it, uses ChatGPT to respond. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm telling my wife, I'm like, this is the world we're entering. It's the employer's robot versus the employee's robot. Like, come on, man.
It's like RoboCop. Remember? We love that movie. That set of movie. I mean,
it's like, wow. That's anyway.
My gosh. That's awesome.
Okay.
I love that.
How do I want to ask you your thoughts on AI in the workplace as it relates to possible layoffs. But before we do that,
yeah,
what's the best way for people to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, Evelyn at nextupleadershipgroup.com is my email. And that's also on my LinkedIn page, which is just Evelyn Walter, or my LinkedIn page for Next Up Leadership Group. So you can go find Next Up Leadership Group. Our tagline is connecting leaders to what's next. So you can find all that. I can also give you my cell phone. People can call me on my cell, send me a text. I mean, lots of ways to get connected. So, but if they go to LinkedIn, find Next Step Leadership Group or find
And
me,
then, okay,
and there's a way for them to schedule a discovery call if they
I
just
see.
want to chat, and would love that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Very good. Last, as we wrap up here, we're
Yeah.
recording this on, what is today? 24th of October, 2024. Gosh, Evelyn, there's so much news and buzz around what AI is going to do to jobs and the workforce. And I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty on top of the AI stuff. Like I read all I can, I listen to all the podcasts,
Yeah.
read all the articles, like primarily because I'm in the recruiting space and I want to know what's going to happen. I want to know what's happening, right?
Yeah.
Um, and boy, you read. I've had people on the show, and they're like, they're on this end where they're like, 300 million jobs eliminated. 40% of the workforce is going to go away. Half the population is going to be on universal basic income. Blah blah blah. And then you got the other people that are way over here. They're like, oh, it's fine. We always create new jobs. We've always created new jobs. Everything's going to be fine. Stop worrying about it. Where are you in this? Where are you in here, Evelyn?
I'm not on either of those sides, that's for sure. I mean,
Are you in the middle?
you
Are
know,
you in the middle, or
yeah,
where are you?
I'm
Yeah.
middle of the road. Yeah. I mean, I was a Republican my whole life, and then I became an independent about 10 years ago, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, so I feel like I am such a moderate now on everything, but I would say on that topic, um, there are so many jobs. I had lunch yesterday actually with a friend who's in the mechanical devices business,
Okay.
one of the biggest, largest companies in the globe for
Okay.
mechanical or medical devices. And the things she was explaining to me, she's in strategy there, very, very big role. And the things she was describing for me about robots doing colonoscopies, robots doing endoscopies, all that. I mean, I was like, wow. I mean, that was really eye-opening for me around the medical field and what's possible, and breakthrough transformation in medical, and that's a business, as you all know, like as we know from just being in the being consumers of that's pretty broken, I think, at least in the US, and
Yeah.
needs a lot of
Yeah.
help. And
Yeah.
so I think there's real opportunity there. But just as we were just talking, I think people are going to continue to interview people. I think people are going to continue to lead people. Sure, is it possible that a people leader says, I have no idea. The owner of the company just came and told me I'm the boss of everyone. Now what am I going to do? And they just asked ChatGPT to come up with their first 90-day plan, their development plan, their 3-year strategy for their business. Like, I get it. And there will need to be the true mind, body, soul of a Steve Urban taking a look at that and saying, okay, that works, that doesn't, just as you just described. I think those are human things, right? You and I've talked about this. Like, I need a human to change the oil in my car, at least for now and
At
probably
least for
for a
now.
while.
For
I
now.
need, at least for now, I need a human to come into my house and clean my ducts and to do all that work, right? I mean, that's pretty important.
Yeah.
I need a human to, so, there's a whole piece around coaching that is, there are coaches now who say, I'm an AI free coach. And I went to my coach and said, what does that mean?
Interesting. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'm an AI
Well,
free coach.
uh,
Like Steve, if you hired me to be your executive coach, we would be having a conversation like this, an hour every week or every other week. I'm not I might be recording it. I might be putting a cool feature onto our Zoom call so that we can get some insight and input. Now there are
note taker
tools
and
out
note the
there
note
that
takers. Yep. Yep.
yeah, but actually evaluate me as a coach on the call. How did I do?
Ah,
Am I listening?
ah,
There's some really
mm,
cool technology that I just tested one of them last week that
cool.
is super fun,
All right.
that is coming out on the market. So I think that there are all those, but I mean, you and I are going to be talking about real life problems and issues, and we're going to be back and forth, and we might have some assistance. So I mean, I just am excited about what's possible, and I don't think we're all gonna, like turn into robots. I also know that the birth rates are declining pretty dramatically. So the
Yep.
number of people that
Yep.
are going to be in the world generationally might just look a little bit different. I mean, birth rates are dropping pretty dramatically. This
Yep.
generation these
Yep.
generations are just not like, they don't want to have 5 kids like the rest of
I
us
know
or whatever, I mean, so yeah,
that,
I'm
that's
excited.
interesting.
I'm hopeful. Yeah,
Are you
I mean,
okay? Okay. All
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Um, Interesting. You mentioned I'm a consultant saying I'm AI free. I do think, I do think there will be pushback eventually. There
Yeah,
already kind of is, but
of
I
course.
think,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I think what'll happen is if in fact AI and robots do drastically start eliminating jobs, people are going to be pissed. And then if unemployment goes up and people are like, hey, AI is taking all these jobs, I think there will be some pushback. And then you'll start to see, the restaurant says, real human waiters, no robots, or
Yes. Right.
whatever. Like
Of
like
course.
there'll probably be
Totally.
that whole
Yeah. Yes.
rebellion thing. So
Of course. And I'm not
um
gonna, I mean, and I'm one of those people. I'm not gonna go to, I mean, I love my gym, no coast CrossFit, but I love the coaches there.
yeah.
I'm never in my husband's classes. I'm always in other coaches' classes, but I don't want a
Yeah.
coach teaching me how to do CrossFit. I don't want a coach. I don't want a robot
A
telling me
robot
what I
yeah,
should be
yeah.
doing differently on my Peloton or in a cycle bar class. I don't want that. I mean, I want a human who's like,
Yeah.
wait, looking at a screen like, Evelyn, you're crushing it. I mean, that's what
Uh,
I want. I want that human. And I get up at 5:30 in the morning a lot of times just so that I can have that community and that, and so I think you're right that people will demand it for their
yeah.
own preferences,
I
right? I
agree.
mean,
Now,
yeah.
now this is a fun little interesting tidbit to end on. Why don't you let your husband coach you? Why not go to his
I
class?
mean, yeah, I mean, that is we could do a whole podcast on that. He is such a phenomenal coach. But
Uh,
it's so similar to what we were just talking about
uh,
around when we can hear advice and input from our best friend and our spouse differently than we can hear it
yeah,
from somebody
totally.
else, I
It's
mean,
still, it's so true.
he'll
Plus,
like modify.
it would
Yeah,
just
he'll
create,
say, "Oh,
it would create unnecessary stress between you and him. Yeah,
well," and
totally.
he just like, "Hey, try it this way," and I'm like, I don't want to do it that way or whatever. And I mean, he does
That's so good.
amazing stuff for me all the time. And then another coach will be like,
Uh,
"Hey, Evelyn, if you really want to get that pull up, you just got to kip harder or whatever." And I'll say, "Oh, really?" And Christian will be like, "I mean, are you kidding? I just said that. Like what? I mean, so yeah,
That's the good
so
stuff, man.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, Evelyn, hey, you've been a treat. I knew you would
Thank
be.
you.
I knew you would
So
be.
fun. I love it.
Your energy level, and your positive spirit, which I'm sure you've been told many
Thank you.
times throughout your
Yeah,
life.
thank you.
It's 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 contagious, I think is the right word. You just want to. You're like. I mean, if you were going to have a dinner party in your neighborhood, like you got to make sure you invite Evelyn.
Thank you. That's so nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you
Awesome.
for being on the show and
Thank
sharing. I
you.
really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
So